What's poppin', y'all? Mike D, quick thought. Dig this. We're gonna talk about storytelling. Okay? Storytelling. Who does not enjoy a good story? Who does not enjoy a good story? And yes, you might not be a novel reader, meaning you're not reading, Harry Potter books and all that kind of stuff. But in essence, the core of our communication is storytelling. Okay? Telling a good story. Like when you're hanging out with your homeboys and there's the one cat that's in y'all's crew that's always the one telling the stories. But if you pay attention, everybody is just hanging on, waiting to see what's next, right? They tell good stories. They might not be true, but they tell good stories. And when you tell a good story, that's what hooks people. So telling a good story is extremely important. So my question to you is, what type of story are you telling? When you communicate, how are you building your story? But outside of just how you verbally communicate that, when somebody sees various aspects of you on social media, on various platforms, out in the street, with your family, with your boys, whatever, each thing that you do, each interaction that you have, each way that you present yourself is in essence an aspect of your story. So my question is, what type of story are you telling? What type of narrative are you building? And this is important, especially now, right? Because I'm recording this on my phone, the Samsung Galaxy S8, or whatever. I think it's S8. Yeah, the Samsung S8. And so I'm recording this on my cell phone, and virtually everybody watching this is probably watching this on their cell phone. And if you're watching this on your cell phone, that means that you have connection with the world in your pocket. So think about that. Connection with the world in your pocket, the ability to tell a story, the ability to put something out there, the ability to create a narrative. Think about that. Create a narrative. So telling a story is important. It's important to be able to do that and build it so that you capture people, so that people are interested in what you bring to the table. That's one. But then two, whether you want to tell a story or not, how you live, how you operate, what you put out there, what you wear, how you act with this group, how you act with that group, how you act at work, how you act when you're chilling, how you act at the bar, how you act on vacation. All of that, all of those things are components that build your story. So what story are you telling? But then the flip side of that is you have a media company in your pocket right now. Like I said, probably 90% of you watching this are watching this via your cell phone. And that's probably not more than an arm's reach away from you at any given moment throughout the day or night, right? Honesty, right? So to that point, storytelling's important. Communication's important. How you live, because, it's a poem that I learned. It's called Live Your Creed by Edgar A. Guest. The last stanza says, "For I may misunderstand you and the fine advice you give, but there's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live." That's powerful, because in essence, what he's talking about is your story. What story are you telling? By how you live, you're telling a story. Okay, so back to the premise of you have a media company in your pocket, meaning your cell phone, with internet access. You got a data plan. You can connect to Wi-Fi if you don't, whatever. You have the means to connect with the world in your pocket. 10 years ago, that would have been crazy to just think about, right? But now, well, 15 years ago, I forget, it's 2017. 15 years ago, that would have been crazy to think that everybody would have that opportunity or ability or a resource at their disposal, but we do. So telling a story is important. How you live tells a story. So that's important. Now that you have the ability to create media at your disposal virtually at any point throughout the day or night, now you have the ability to create your narrative or to write your story. Now, I'm not talking about literally writing, right? I'm talking about actually you have the ability to create your narrative. You have the ability to tell your story. So When it comes down to it, used to be we would live in a world in which, oh, I heard this about somebody, or you have to piece things together and then people come up with their own conclusions about who a person is or what they're about or how they operate. Now, you, with this thing in your pocket that you're watching this video on, with that, you have the ability to control your narrative. So if you are a person who has aspirations of, being a celebrity, you want to be in the music industry, an actor, actress, or whatever, you have the ability to create your own narrative that puts you in a light in which people view you as a celebrity or views you as a musician or an actor or an actress. If you are a person who is a great family man, or you have you're a great father, a great husband, whatever, you have the ability through your media company in your pocket to create the narrative that tells that story. So we have to be very conscious and very intentional about how we operate, because the narrative and the story that we create now is not like it was 30 years ago, right? Where you might have had, we tell stories all the time, me and some of my buddies from college, about how we always had a homeboy who had a video camera. And this was back in the day when we were partying and drinking a whole lot and doing all this crazy stuff. But we always had a homeboy who had a video camera. And for some odd reason, he at the time did not drink and didn't do some of those things. So he was always of sober mind when he had his video camera or his camera available. So he had documentation of everything, right? And we probably need to go and collect a pool of money and pay him off so that stuff never resurfaces. But anyway, that's beside the point, back in the day. But long story short, we had documentation of things, but then the only way that those things became available was if going through his garage, he found the old box of tapes or data that he'd uploaded to an old desktop computer he had almost 20 years ago. And that would be the only way that the information or the narrative that was created by us as, dumb college kids, 20 years ago, that's the only way that stuff would make it to light. Or that's the only way that my kids, fast forward another 20 years, would have the access to that stuff to see the narrative that their dad created, back in the late 90s, right? So to that point now, with the media company in your pocket, that's no longer the case. Everything that you put out there is pretty much going to be searchable, is going to be living on the web probably for eternity, right? So your grandkids or your great grandkids or your great great grandkids, if they want to know about how was great great granddad way back in the 2010s or the 20 teens or back in the 2020s, how was great great granddad back then, they will be able to access virtually everything that you put out there via your social media feeds or emails, whatever stuff you put out there, that stuff's going to be there, right? So we have to be careful with the narrative that we're creating, not just for the present, but think about 3 or 4 generations from now. I would love to have been able to go back and see, my great great grandparents and some of the stuff that they did and the conversations they had, what their voice sounded like, what was their style like, what type of people they were. I would love to have been able to do that, because now it's just kind of wishful thinking. A few stories pass through the generations, but there's no documented data. Whereas now you have the ability to create your narrative. You have the ability to tell your story. And that's important for a legacy perspective. That's important based on the image that you put out there, because in reality, people take all these different things, these different components, they mishmash them together, and they formulate who they believe that you are, or they formulate the image that they are building or constructing around you. And so we have to be very conscious of the story we tell, of the story we allow others to tell. So sometimes having this media company in your pocket is all about being able to kind of ward off some of the negative stories that are being told by others. So you have the ability for folks to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, right? So it's important to tell your story. It's important to control your narrative, but it's also important to be very intentional when you do it. You dig? So, all right, y'all, work on telling some good stories, leave a legacy, and Holla at you later, man. Peace. Mike D's here.